Hello, it's Chino here. If you like aggressive openings, you're in the right place. Today I'd like to look at a game between the Chinese Super GM, Li Chao and Wang, and I think this one was at the Dresden Open a couple of years ago. So yeah, this featured a two knights defense after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, pawn takes d4, and bishop c4, knight f6. Yeah, so it's called a two knights defense because black employs these two knights. But just going back one move, after bishop to c4, black sometimes plays bishop to c5 to try and hold on to this b4 pawn. But that leads to the Scottish Gambit, yeah, which we'll cover in another video. But just going back to the game, so after the position with bishop to c4, black opted for the two knights defense with knight to f6. Okay, now in this position, white simply castled. The alternative is to play e5, which is another good variation, but I quite like castle's king side. The point being that white's now ready to, well, with the king tucked away, on the king side, white's now ready to, start playing in the center of the board. So, for example, can we capture the piece? Can even play a gambit with c3. There are lots of possibilities here. But anyway, let's see what happens. So in the game, black opts for the main line of the two knights defense, which goes knight takes e4. It looks a bit risky because the rook can pin the knight. But this has been well analyzed, and with accurate play should be okay for black. I mean, it's worth pointing out here that knight takes e4 happens to be the best move in the position. But I won't bore you with all the theory. Let's just enjoy the game. So rook to e1, threatening to win the knight, and black correctly responds with pawn to d5. So that pawn's defending the knight. Just taking that move back, it's just worth noting the other pawn move to defend the knight. It's well and truly bad, and because it opens this diagonal, opens up this diagonal, I mean, black's gonna have difficulties tucking the king on the king side because of this bishop diagonal. I mean, in this position, the best response for white would be bishop to d5, preventing black from playing the pawn to d5 to defend the knight. It's worth noting here as well, this bishop threatens to win back a pawn after bishop takes e4, pawn takes e4, and rook takes e4. If black were to continue, say, bishop to c5, trying to hold on to the d4 pawn, white can just simply play knight b to d2, and this is going to be crushing. I mean, black can't prevent, multiple captures on e4 with a winning attack. So just to illustrate how bad this is for black, and if say something like queen to f6 to try and develop more pieces, and note the black can't castle king side. Knight takes e4 would follow. After pawn takes e4, rook takes e4, check. The king either moves and loses castling white, or black blocks with knight to e7. But then we've got this move, bishop to g5, and then once the queen moves, queen to e2, it's just crushing. I mean, black's threatening to win material on e7. Sorry, white is threatening to win material on e7. Okay, and let's go back to the game position. So enough of the digression. So yeah, after knight takes e4 and rook to e1, black played the correct pawn to d5, defending the knight. And this is where it starts to get interesting. Mind you, this is all theory up until black makes a mistake. So bishop takes d5, bang. Looks like a piece sacrifice, right? Queen takes d5. So now white's not just down a pawn, white's down a bishop as well. But look at this, knight to c3. The point here is that knight threatens to win the queen and threatens to win the knight on e4. So if you like, a double attack. The point is that this capture is impossible because black would lose the queen. Okay, we don't want to do that. So let's just go back. And also knight is impossible because of this pin on the e file. Okay, so here black has to decide what to do with the queen. There are a few possibilities. I mean, queen to f5, but white's going to regain the piece anyway. The most popular move is queen h5, which is played in the game. But a mistake that's made often by black, or a less accurate move, is queen to a5. Now, if black were to play this move, I think the best continuation for white here is to go knight takes e4, regaining a piece. Important to note that you shouldn't play rook takes e4, because in some variations, I wouldn't want to digress again, but in some variations that rook can get trapped. But knight takes e4 is the correct variation. Now the threat already is knight to f6 or d6 with a discovered attack, which could be crushing. So black would be best advised to play bishop to e6 to block, the potential check on the e file. But then after knight e to g5, and castles king queen side, we see the whites regaining the pawn he had given up a couple of moves ago. So after a few moves like this, I think sorry, rook to e4 just to stop the queen from capturing the pawn on c2 after something like bishop to d2. So after moves like this, we see it's only white who can be better in this position because white's got complete control of the e file. Alright, enough of the digression, back to the game. So after this clever move in knight to c3, black had to decide where to put the queen and correctly played the recommended move, which is queen to h5. Okay, a few more moves of theory, and white obviously has to regain his pawn, so we saw knight takes e4 in the game. And yeah, there's this threat of discover check, knight to f6, a check from the knight and the rook, and also winning the queen. So yeah, black has to do something about it with bishop to e6. And this is the other important move in theory, so bishop to g5. The point is, this bishop prevents the black king from castling queenside. And yeah, in this position, there were several moves recommended by theory. One of the more reliable ones being bishop to d6. And the point being that after, say, something like knight takes d6 check, c takes d6, bishop to f4 trying to win a pawn, queen to d5, and black should just about be holding, everything together. I mean, he's up a pawn, but the pawns are doubled and somewhat weak, but with some careful play, black should be okay. Anyway, instead of discontinuation, so if we go back to the position after bishop to g5, instead of bishop d6 or one of the other well-known tries, black made the first inaccuracy and played h6. And you're probably wondering, well, what's wrong with that move? But here we go. Bishop to f6, bang. Brilliant. I mean, the point obviously is pawn takes f6 isn't possible because of knight takes f6 check, winning the queen. So we don't want to do that. So just going back to that position after bishop to f6. And here, black probably makes the bigger of the two inaccuracies. I mean, paradoxically, one of the moves recommended by the computer engines is queen to d5, just ignoring the bishop. But I mean, even better is bishop to e7, which is a move recommended by Stockfish, the computer engine I was using to analyze this game. And the point here is that after bishop takes e7 and king takes e7, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and d1, sorry, and rook takes d1, and this is only a slight advantage for white. I mean, okay, if you look at the materials equal, same number of pieces, same number of pawns, but the black king is less safe on e7 than the white king on g1. So white would have a slightly better position. I mean, white can also double pawns by capturing on c6 if allowed at some point. Sorry, just go back if given the chance. But I mean, this position should be roughly equal, maybe with a slight advantage for white. Yeah, so just going back to the position after the brilliancy with bishop to f6. Black made the final mistake in the game, which was to play queen to f5. Okay, and let's just see how white, the super GM, punished this move. So I think the point here after the continuation knight takes d4 is the lines are almost forced. So knight takes d4 is regained the pawn, but the knight also threatens the queen at the same time. So black's forced to capture on d4. And then now queen takes d4, and then black played queen to d5. But just to point out that the bishop still can't be captured on f6, because after pawn takes f6 and knight takes f6 check, the king has only got one square. Notice the king can't go on the d file because of this queen. So king to e7, but that would be met by knight to d5 check. And notice the queen can't capture on d5 because that would just lose after this. This bishop can't capture the queen, you know, because of the pin on the king. Yeah, so just going back, so we see queen can't capture on d5. So here, if black were to go back king to e8, well, knight takes c7 check, and capturing on a8 next would just be winning, would just be crushing for white. So yeah, just going back to that position after, yeah, let's just go back a few moves to remind us where we were. So after this queen to, so yeah, so it was bishop to f6, queen to f5, knight takes d4, starting a forcing sequence, knight takes d4, queen takes d4. We see that, yeah, pawn takes bishop wasn't possible still because of knight takes f6 check with a crushing attack. So yeah, black tried queen to d5, trying to trade pieces just to release some pressure, but white just calmly played a quiet but brilliant move, which is queen to e3. Now the point here is black still can't capture the bishop because of knight takes f6 check, winning the queen. And yeah, this just yeah, maintains the pressure on the black king. No, the black king can't castle queenside because of this bishop here. I mean, even a move like bishop to e7 won't work here because white would just go rook a to d1 and threatening the queen. And if, say, the queen tried to go somewhere safe, note the queen wants to stay on the, you know, king side to try and help with the defense of the black king rather than capture on b2. But here, white would just go bishop takes e7, and after takes king takes e7, queen a3 check. Yeah, is a bit difficult for black, because the king has to go back to e8. Note the king can't come to f6 or come to the d file, or can't even go to f8. So king back to e8, but then knight to c5 is just crushing. I mean, just to give you one alternative, I mean, black's struggling for moves here. If, for example, pawn to h5, let's just make a move. Knight takes b7. I mean, white's not just up material, has the safer king, better placed pieces, etc. Yeah, so just going back to the game so we can see the finish. So yeah, after this quiet retreat with queen to e3, black played queen f5, not knowing what to do, but then followed queen to d3. Notice in some lines there's a threat of knight to d6 check. The point being that if bishop takes d6, queen takes f5 would win. The queen, because of this pin against the king. Yeah, hopefully you could follow that without me putting the moves on the board. But yeah, so now I think black tried bishop to e7, but then after bishop takes g7, we see the white's upper pawn threatening to win the queen, not the queen, sorry, the rook on h8. Had black starved of moves, and black tried a little bit to counterplay, but too little, too late. So rook to d8, threatening the queen. But then after this move, knight to d6 check. Rook takes d6. Queen takes f5 and bishop takes f5. Bishop takes h8, and it was clear that white was well and truly winning in this position. So just to explain, white's got two rooks and a bishop against a rook and two bishops. So we can see white up in material. And if you look at the pawns as well, white's got what, 6 versus 5. I mean, black could win a pawn, but I mean, white's still up in material. So yeah, so black resigned in this game. So yeah, this was a very good illustration of how to play against the two knights defense. But yeah, if we just recap, I just go back to the main moves. So after bishop to c4, knight f6 instead of bishop c5 introduces the two knights defense. Yeah, sorry, just going back a move. And after castles kingside by white, knight takes e4 as the main line. Rook e1 and d5 is usually met by this temporary piece sacrifice. The point being that after queen takes d5, knight c3 will regain the piece by force. And we saw that the knight can be captured because of, you know, this queen hanging and because of this pin on the e file. So yeah, queen h5 is correct theory. Knight takes c4 is correct. Bishop e6 is correct. Bishop g5 is correct. But yeah, instead of h6, which was the big error in this game, bishop d6 would maintain some quality for black. But I think if there's anything you should take away from this game is that if h6, bishop f6 is very strong, and the point being that black can't capture the bishop on f6 because of this knight takes f6 check, winning the queen. And we saw in quite a few variations that, yeah, this bishop could stay on f6 for quite some time because the tactics just don't work in black's favor. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this one. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and share if you love this video, and hope to see you on the next one.